It's a strong army, which means it's a strong country. Welcome to lesson 16.3. What role did rapid change play in Japan becoming a military power with an expansionist worldview? We're going to learn a lot in this lesson, so stick around and let's learn something. What role did rapid change play in Japan becoming a military power with an expansionist worldview? This is lesson 16.3. We've got a strong army and we've got a strong country. Doesn't it take a genius to know that countries are always growing? No matter what, they're always growing. And Japan during the Meiji period was growing, and they wanted to grow into a country that was seen as strong and competitive. Where did all this come from? Well, this came from the West, because the Meiji leaders, they were looking at those Western powers, and they were looking at them, and they noticed that there was something that the Western powers had in common. One of the things that they had in common was the control over foreign land and territories. Everybody seemed to have this imperial empire that kind of existed, and they were controlling these foreign lands and these foreign people. All these countries, these Western powers, they had military power to defend not only themselves, but also to defend their territories, their foreign territories. And all of the countries had strong, independent economies. That's what Japan wanted. Japan wanted those three things, and that's what they do. So step number one is they start taking steps to strengthen their military. This allows Japan to acquire more territory in Asia, and the more territory they controlled, the more influence in Asia they had. They wanted that strong military because they saw that there was some Western aggression that was taking place, as well as aggression from China and from Russia. China and Russia are going to be some of Japan's closest neighbors. And Japan's government, they're all about the mottos. They changed their motto from Western science, Japanese essence, to a new motto. Wealthy country, strong army. So the first step in doing all of this is to get that army strong is the conscription law that takes place in 1873. The conscription law requires all males to serve in the military for a minimum of 3 years. That's a long time. Okay? Not only that, after you're done your military service, you are in reserve duty for an additional 4 years. So you're looking at a minimum of 7 years of some involvement in the military, which is huge. The second step, now that we're getting this strong military, it's time to take over some of the island territories that are in the Pacific. Now we're taking these over. And this is going to lead to some wars. Wars specifically with China and Russia. Now, China was carved up during the Opium Wars, and they were also involved in unequal treaties with Western countries who seized power over them. And Japan was watching pretty close, and they were fearful that the Chinese would fall and collapse because of this Western influence. And if China does that, then Japan is probably going to be next on the Western influenced targets that existed back then. So they were worried about China. And they were also worried about Russia, which was considered to be a Western country, because there's also a lot of influence coming from Russia. So in order to combat this, the Japanese, they look at Korea, another neighbor of Japan, which borders both China and Russia, and they want to take over and control Korea, which leads us to the Sino-Japanese War, which is a war between Japan and China. It was a quick war. It didn't last very long because Japan's superior military strength just overpowered the Chinese, and Japan is victorious, which after war leads to a peace treaty, which gives up which sees China giving up claims to Korea. Japan also takes Taiwan and takes the rights to the Liaotung Peninsula, which is northeast of Korea. The peace treaty grants Japan a large indemnity, which are payments for losses, and it gives Japan special economic rights in China. So right now, Japan is in a really good situation for themselves, but this worries the Western powers. Russia, France, and Germany, they're starting to pay attention, and they intervene, and they make changes to this peace treaty. They force Japan to give back the Liaotung Peninsula, which right away Russia takes. Then they force China to give Western countries special economic considerations as well. If Japan has special economic rights in China, how come the West can't have special economic rights in China? So they make changes. The West makes changes to this peace treaty. And that brings us next to the Japanese war with the Russians. And Japan continues to build on that military strength. They continue to build because they're not happy with the peace treaty that took place after the war with China. And in 1904, they attack the Russians in the Liaotung Peninsula. And this leads to full-out war in 1905. Now, around the same time as this is happening in Japanese history, there's something happening in Russian history, the Russian Revolution. And what happens is Russia cannot handle this revolution that is taking place and a war at the same time. So they enter into a peace negotiations, into like peace talks with Japan instead, at which point Japan then takes Korea. Japan is now seen as an imperial power, which later in World War I and World War II is going to play a role in Japan's involvement in both of those wars, as we will see in future lessons. Let's take a look at land disputes that exist today. We're going to talk about Hans Island. Hans Island is towards the North Pole, towards the Arctic, and is between Canada and Greenland. Now, Canada's Ellesmere Island and Greenland, which is actually belongs to Denmark, this island is disputed. Canada says it belongs to them, and Denmark says it belongs to them. So Canada claims that this island is Canadian because it was discovered by the British and then became a part of Canada in Canada's evolving history, which you've learned in previous grades. Hans Island first shows up on a map in 1967 on a world map. And then the Dutch see this and they're surprised and they're like, wait a second. This map is saying that this belongs to Canada? No. Hans Island is a part of Greenland. Both countries agree that Hans Island is going to play a very important role in the future as part of a major shipping route. And both agree that there are possible oil and gas reserves that exist on or near around this island. So whichever country lays claims to this island will control that shipping route, will control the oil and gas reserves that exist as well. So that's definitely something to think about. So it's not just in the histories that we talk about. We are included in land disputes even today in modern times, even in our own story of Canada and our history. All right, I want you to head over to your notebooks and complete the questions for this part of the chapter.